I'm Beth.
I'm Lou,
And this is House of BLU.
Welcome to our first episode of Writing WORX. We got there, we did it.
Nailed it.
That will get
100%.
Back percent.
Back percent. Okay, so our first episode of Writing WORX is all about world building and what works for us, what doesn't work for us, some like techniques. Because I have heard some techniques where I'm just like,
I'm good. Yeah.
I tried it. I spent 6 hours looking at a wall and then crisis eating pizza. But that's the thing with art.
It's a regular Sunday for us, isn't it?
That's the thing with art. Like we said in the introduction video, like these are just things that work for us. Take from it what you will.
Yes.
It might not work for you, but if it does, great. Let us know. If it doesn't,
hope we were entertaining.
yeah.
That's it. Alrighty, so world building. If you were a writer, you probably have heard this term. If you're not a writer, basically it's constructing the world or building the world that your novel is set in. Even if you're not in a fantasy world or you're not in a sci-fi world, you still need to world build. You still need to know, where is it set? Is it Brisbane? Is it Sydney? Is it America? Is it just America is the same as Brisbane and Sydney? Is it London? Is it the 1800s? Is it present day? Having that research and having that background knowledge so that it's accurate to what you're writing, because you don't want to be like, not that everyone's going to be an expert in like 1800s fashion, but if you're talking about it and people are like...
You need to do your research. Yeah.
If anything, I personally prefer having that research because then I have a starting point. If it's just kind of like, what do I feel like doing? My brain's just like, there's so much. Like any writing student knows, you get those like short story assignments and it's like, write a 2,000 word short story on anything. And you're like, narrow it down, please!
Give me a concept!
I have too many ideas in my head, I can't pick one.
And then you submit it and they're just like, interesting concept. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a positive feedback or a negative one.
So world building techniques, like the most basic sort of things that you want to have is you want like political backdrop, social backdrop, economic backdrop, and like the physics of that world. Those are your four main just grounding elements that you want in world building.
You need to know, like, for example, in one of my novels, there's a few different dimensions, and each dimensions have their own languages, their own laws, their own social hierarchies as well. Some of them are segregated, some of them are mixed, but you need to know how things work because...
Basically, so that, and it's having a place to put it as well so that there's continuity. So that in 3 books' time, you don't suddenly change some law of physics that you had in the first book.
So we both have our own folders. What works for me, I have 2 different examples for you guys. So I'm working on 3 different novels at the moment, but I'm just going to focus on 2. The first one is set in the real world, but it's not set in Australia where we live. It's set in Korea. And some scenes are set in China and Hong Kong. So they're all places that I've been. But I started with the concept. And then with my character, I was just like, well, I kind of need to know where her parents come from as well. And the more I did, then I realized, you know, there's stuff with like the Korean War that I have to take into consideration as well. Different buildings, temples, runes. And so what works for me is planning it all out in mind maps, and then because I'm a visual person, I need to draw it out. And so, for example, like this is the one that's set in the real world, like Lou said. Whether it's fantasy or in the real world, you kind of need to do world building either way. And so like I will draw out, I don't know if you could see, but like draw out the different settings, especially because I know for this book I want each chapter title to have an illustration. And so it helps knowing what things look like, what colours they are. Like this one is set in a cafe and it's a family cafe. And so what colour scheme is the cafe? What does it sound like there? Are there any regulars that go to the cafe? What training do they have? Etc. And needing to know like the subway stations to get there. It's just like the details. Like I have a map of the Seoul subway station in my folder so that I can always refer to it. And I've got all of my locations mapped out so that even if I'm not explicitly saying like Kara got onto the train, line number 2, like
You know.
just knowing where it's going, how close is it to the Han River, etc., etc. Whereas in my fantasy novel, there's a lot more. I've been working on it for 5 years, and so one of the dimensions, gravity doesn't exist, and there's wasteland. It's all coloured in tan. There's no colour there, and there's a strict five level hierarchy, and so planning out what are the laws of this one, what are the laws of this one, are there any exceptions as well, and then writing it all down. As a writer, you should be writing all of your ideas down. And I think something that we both find helpful is when you're scribbling out notes, scribble out notes, but then transcribe them into a more condensed form.
Like these Bibles
We
that we have. Because
Bibles.
yes, organisation. So conversely to Bear, who I know art background, she's super, super, super visual. I know she's designed half the tattoos in my novel, or all of them really. I am not a very visual person. I draw a mean stick figure, but I'm not very artistic, so I have to use words and descriptions and notes. So my Bible is predominantly a lot of I did map design because I thought it was really cool, so I designed a map. So my novel is fantasy based, so it was God, again, been working on it for about 6 years or so, more even, some ridiculous amount of time. In its first iteration, it was just like a alternate universe, and then I changed so much stuff. I was like, might as well just make this its own world. So mine is like pure fantasy, entirely new worlds, more medieval style fantasy as opposed to science fiction style fantasy. So I had to make 10 countries. And I was like, okay, wow. Big off to making 10 countries off the cuff. So I've taken influence from 10 actual real world countries. So ranging from like China, I think Macedonia in there, Greece, Italy, Australia is one of them. So mine, the main country that my novel is set in is based on Australia. World building wise though, I have, for every one of my 10 countries, I have like page breakdowns. So I have the language that's spoken there and then what country it's based on. So when I'm creating the language as well, I'm jotting down every new word that I create in that language. And basically my system is to Google Translate the word and then alter it ever so slightly. Everything has like a royal color, and then because I have like, I say abilities because I don't like the word powers because it sounds lame. I have abilities, people who are have abilities in my novel, so whether or not those abilities are legal or not in that country. And then not only that, but I break it down to like what's its role in the story, what characters are related to this specific country, what are its unique features, so that's like its flora and fauna. Again, because I'm taking influence from actual real life countries, I just kind of take what their flora and fauna is. Because the dream would be this being turned into a movie. So,
yeah.
You know, handy that the main character is a redhead with blue eyes in her 20s. I told you all I lived through my novels. Yeah, unique features, cultural groups, and then senses are a big thing for me personally. So because I don't have that artistic ability to be like, yes, this is what it looks like perfectly from the brain, I have to think of the senses. What does it smell like? What does it sound like? What are the sights here? Going as well into the history of it, like physically the history, and then the backdrop for conflict. So that for me is breaking down like, in the past, has there been any specific conflicts that are still sort of leaving a bit of a tinge? So like how you said, when you're doing your novel set in Korea, you have to think about the Korean War.
Right.
And how that influences things. Similar thing here, except I get to make it up. I also have mythology, because I have a whole mythology for every ability and how it came about. And then just other notes, because I can't say that in 2 novels time I'm going to be like, yes, this is all accurate, or if I will have changed 10 million things. So I have one of those for every single one of my countries, as well as that I have a breakdown of the actual, let me find it, that's a pretty one, the actual abilities themselves, and then what countries that they're linked to. So I spent a week straight, like 5 days of the week, beginning my world building. It's by no means finished. I'm kind of doing it as I need it, writing things down, starting to get base stuff out, but yeah, my first novel is just set in the one country and only is influenced by one other country, so those are the two I'm focusing on mostly. Whereas the second and third book, the main character travels around a lot more, so I'm going to have a lot more knowledge on those other countries.
Right. I just thought of another thing that's relevant for me, and not everyone will have the opportunities or funds, I guess, to do this. I've just had it when I've had like bursts of extra money, like birthday money, but I like bringing objects or tokens from my novels into the real world. So for example, in one of my novels, the one that's set in Korea actually, the main character gets a gift of a necklace that's silver and heart-shaped and has Y squared carved into it, and it's the necklace.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. She wears that like all the time.
Yeah, I never take it off. I haven't taken it off for like 3 years. But I bought it for myself because I was just like, if I buy this, and it was when I had no money at the time, and it was really expensive. I ended up with 12 cents in my bank account the day before payday. But I was just like, if I'm going to buy myself this is my commitment to myself to make sure that I, finish the novel and that like I do it justice, because like I have all these characters living in my head and they want to, be brought into the real world. And so I have things like this where the necklace is from the novel, but I also have, and give me a second, the other thing I have is from my other novel. There's a school that's color-coded, and it's a whole thing. So that's another world building thing, because it's mainly set in the school. It's a Chinese school, international school, and so there is a color-coded system and there's a class system and there's different uniforms. But another thing that I brought into our real world are name badges with the color-coded sticker on it. So I made one for myself too, because I'm narcissistic. I have narcissistic tendencies and I like to, like you said, live through my novels. I want to make a comic at one point that's just like my background life, and it's just me inserting myself into like scenes that I've written, just be like, hey guys, you're doing great, I love you. But yes, I made one for myself, and because it's an international school, there's the name in the native language of that student. So I have a Thai student as well who's the main character, so it's her Thai name and then the Chinese, because they all get given Chinese names, so that if they're doing something wrong and teenagery, which they are, they love breaking the rules.
A lot happens in your novels.
Yes, the teachers can see the Chinese name no matter and like call them out on it. But yeah, having things in the real world where I can see this and be like, having it there, like a visual person, like I said, I like drawing it out and I like having it. So that it just makes it so much easier when I'm writing, because I see this and I'm just like, oh yes, don't forget to mention the badges and don't forget about the color system, and it's just a nice constant reminder.
Yeah, whereas I tend to use music. So like I said, I'm a lot more sort of write down all your facts, write down lots of words, but I also use music. So if I'm like having a writer's block, I have my working music playlist, which is just filled with epic instrumental music where I'm like, yes, I'm like riding through the woods towards battle, this is incredible. And I'll just sit and I'll just let myself like zone out and listen to that. That's kind of where a lot of my ideas come from, and where a lot of my scene concepts come from, is from just lying there and just letting my imagination sort of run wild, which is why I think acting was something I jumped to, because it was just doing the imagining and then actually being able to act it out. So yeah, and music is a big stimulus for me for that, and I have that playlist. It's pretty well like my Leanne Tollian trilogy. Whoops, dropped the name. It's pretty much my novels playlist, but like their soundtrack. I would be like, I want something like this to whoever's composing it when it's inevitably a film.
Of course. Think about your character when you're building your world. If you're starting to build a world and you don't have the character profile done, it's not going to be a waste of time, but it's like
so much changes once you
so
have your
much
characters.
changes. Like even in like my folder, so like Lou's Bible, I have this set, these 3 notebooks that I've been working on for like 3 years. I was looking through the first one the other day and nothing was relevant. So much has changed. And it's because I strengthened my characters and I was just like, this is because I did a chapter outline for each chapter in the trilogy as well. So once I knew who she was, what she was willing to compromise, what she wasn't willing to compromise, and her growth as a character, a lot of the world kind of changed around that. So making sure you know your characters inside and out before you start really getting into the world building.
Well, like I said, mine started off as just like a parallel universe in England, because that's where my heart lives secretly. And she wasn't necessarily like, she didn't have an ability, like powers weren't really a thing in the first iteration of the novel. And then I was like, my main character needs something, you know, your main character always needs that like one thing that makes them slightly special. That's why they're the main character. And I was like, oh, what if I did do abilities? And then the novel just entirely changed, and because it changed so much, I was like, all right, well, let's create this new world. How did these abilities come around? You know, are there gods that gifted them? Is there a mythology behind it? How did they actually get these abilities? How are these abilities perceived by people? And just deciding my main character needed something special about her changed the entire novel series, basically, to something completely different. When I think about the dream that prompted this novel and where the novel is now, there's like literally no link except that the main character's a girl. That's the only thing that's the same.
Time and Fallen Leaves started as just 3 dimensions, and then I was stuck on this one point for ages, and it wasn't until actually we were sitting on Guangali Beach in Busan and you were like, you said something and it like cleared up like a sticking point for me, and I was like, wait. And basically it was just like, why is this character doing this? Like, it was a purpose thing.
Big actor energy to be like, what was their motivation?
Just like literally just like, why would they do that though? And it was the first time like I'd actually gotten like feedback in that question, like, why would they do that? And I was just like, holy shit, that's like a massive plot point. Like, if they have no motivation, like there's literally no purpose for the whole book.
Basically, when it comes to world building, you need to pick what works for you, whether that is the more artistic approach. If you have someone who can draw, great. Like I said, Bear's drawn a lot of the tattoo designs, because for so long I was like trying to describe the tattoos that people had, and I'm like, I don't know what they look like, and I have no artistic brain. And Bear was like, I was like, something like this. It needs to revolve around this language. And she was like this. And I was like, brilliant, beautiful, iconic, yes. So sometimes it is those artistic triggers, or like Bear said as well, those real world, having a physical manifestation of it,
like bringing it to life.
Like I have to print chapter chunks to be like, it exists, not just on my computer,
not just in the Scrivener,
it's real. Oh yeah, Scrivener, top-notch program. Great for world building because you can have all the research folders. And you can have different, like I think in mine I've got like a folder for each ability, a folder for each country. So whether it's physical manifestations, artistically creating what your world is, or even just noting it all down using descriptive terminology. So I use a lot of descriptive terminology when I'm writing about the political history, the mythology, all of that. It's written almost like a short story in there, because that's how my brain works, because that's how I can visualize it. And just knowing what your sort of creative triggers are. So like I said, music is a big creative trigger for me. For Bear, it's artwork. Knowing what that is, and then just letting your brain run with it and see where it goes.
Don't second guess yourself until it's done. Like there's so many times. It's just, I think it's just a natural artistic / creative person's brain, is that you'll be halfway through something and there's a little voice that's just like, it's shit, it sucks, I hate it. And you're just like, the longer you look at it, there's so many times where I've just like, I'm not going to delete this and I'm going to leave it in Procreate, or I'm not going to delete this and I'm just going to leave it in my Scrivener, and then I'll come back to it. Or I found like some old writing. I found an old USB and I found some old writing from like the 11th grade. And I was just like, this is brilliant! Do I add a 4th novel in the works?
I had that with when I was like condensing my 10 million pages of notes into this bad boy. I kept coming across stuff. I'm like, damn, Pars Luella! Yes! Yes, I stand. We agree. Good quality stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, never discount anything that you've done. Eventually, though, like on the other side of that, don't hold on to everything.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to be brutal at some point. You're not gonna be able to have everything you want in there because it'll be too crowded. So I guess economy when it comes to world building. So that's a concept in acting, like economy of character. Like if you're a 3-line character in a TV show and you're like a waitress and you just have to say, here's your coffee, here's your bill, thanks for coming. You don't need a backstory that character's like had a traumatic past where both her parents died and so she works this job because it's the only way she can support her sister. No one cares. You just have to say 3 lines. So it's similar in writing, like economy of writing. Only write what is necessary to give you as the author an understanding of your world. Because once you know it, you'll be able to create as much as you want. You'll be writing things and you'll be like, oh yes, and then this can add to this world. And
plus it adds a sense of mystery. If you've got like a character who's like a minor character with a traumatic past, there are certain things that, like certain tendencies or characteristics that they might have. And so then it leaves the reader to have the imagination to be like, I wonder why she's acting like that. Or what's her deal?
Yeah.
And being able to, I think what brings, because there's a lot for me, because that's one of my hardest things is cutting things out. Because I just love everyone.
That's why I'm your editor.
Yeah.
I'm a savage.
But just knowing that I will have the copy that is like 5 million words.
It's like in film, director's cut, theatrical cut.
Exactly.
And realizing as well that what you think is going to work, other people might be like, oh, I don't quite get that. Or your editor might be like, that's not really going to sell. So writing it uncensored and unfiltered and writing it the way that you want it, but being aware that when you receive criticism, you need to take it on board, but you also need to analyze that criticism. Is it constructive criticism? Does this person legitimately want me to do better with this? Or do they just hate it? Or they're just trying to cut me down so that they feel better about themselves?
We've both done creative writing degrees. I'm still finishing mine up. But like you said with like the short story, and just like, write about anything. And then the feedback will be just like, I didn't like the vibe. It's just like, thank you.
What does that mean? Ooh,
But then you have
subjective
teachers.
degrees.
But then you have teachers that are just like, you came into this too quickly, you didn't like
go into the technical aspects as opposed to just like the vibe was off.
I just don't like your style. Writing works.
Writing works, apparently. So yeah, I hope that our ramblings about what we personally do helps. I find whenever I'm teaching and whenever I'm learning, I always do learn best from people's personal experience.
Yeah.
These are by no means specifically technical aspects. I mean, most of the like basic details I did get from, I feel like it was something like novel writing for dummies. I think I went to that level. Despite having a bachelor's degree, I was like, novel writing for dummies. Just because that's how my brain works. I was like, I need to have my specific headlines that I need to hit. So if you work like that, Google is great for that kind of thing. Finding resources, going like world building basics, and it'll tell you, templates, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I have my template for every single one, which I got off the internet because that's how my brain works. It's like, we need to have it all mapped out. So if that's how your brain works, then 100% find those templates, write it out. If you are more creative and drawing, it's going to help you understand, go for it. I can't even think of if having, I just think of the meme with the guy with the string and how it all connects. If that works for you, whatever works for you, you need to do. Like, don't go, oh, I have to do it this way because I was taught this way. Do what works for you, but world building is something you have to do. Hopefully you found some of it useful. Each week we'll sort of be taking a specific topic of writing, so character profiles, blah, blah, blah. Going forward as well, we're going to do writing prompts and sharing our own responses and our own approaches because we're both very different writers. Yeah. The way that we write. And with those writing prompts as well, we would love it if you guys wrote stuff, sent it through to us. We'll check our email in the link below. Can't guarantee how quickly we will get back to you because we have lives.
What we like to call lives.
Yeah. Just trying to make us sound like we're busy. So when we're doing those writing prompts. If you guys want to write something and send it through to us for us to have a look, we'd be more than happy to. Love to see what your writing styles are like. Let us know if any of this was useful. Let us know if you have any specific writing techniques that you would like to know more about. We'll give you our thoughts and opinions on those. Otherwise,
blew out.
Yeah, blew out.